all the casualties, of that occurred, there were only about 70. I think we had about 71 who were actually killed, but our company was wiped out about 2.5 times. But the others who were casualties were just wounds. Now then, this plan of attack, of making an attack, as I've explained it, Pershing had a pet division, which was the first division, and it was a good division. We thought we were better, but they were a good division. And they were to have the honor of making the first attack. And we were supposed to play the part of the old troops that would come up to relieve them. And this was scheduled for the 1st of June. And the attack was to be made on a place called Cantigny, C-A-N-T-I-G-N-Y. So after we had been in line, as I say, 55 days, we came out and got new uniforms, and they fed us up and so forth. And we were to go up and relieve the 1st Division at this attack. That was the 1st of June. Well, at this time, the Germans had broken through, and they got nearer to Paris than at any other time except at the very first days of the war. And so instead of going up to Cantigny, we were prepared to leave one night at 10 o'clock. And we finally got to sleep, and they told us to turn in. And the next morning, we got on board trucks to go up, and we didn't have any idea where we were going. And we were scheduled to go to the front that was called Chateau-Thierry. The town of Chateau-Thierry, we were never in the town of Chateau-Thierry. We were south of it. And but we went up there, and we were on trucks, of course. When when we'd go into line, they would give us transportation. When we left, we'd have to walk. But on this occasion, without any idea where we were going, and the Germans had broken through entirely at that point. Now, in making an attack on both sides, it was kind of like the attack was made kind of like an accordion. The outfit would be in front, and they would bring the artillery up as close as possible to the front line. And then they'd have a rolling barrage firing in front of the troops as they advanced. And they'd go as far as they could, as far as the artillery would fire, see. And then they'd have to stop, and they'd bring up the artillery again, and then go up again. Well, we went into lines, to the line there, just in the Chateau-Thierry front. And we went into a line in a wheat field, and we stopped there, and they told us to dig in, which we, of course, did. And it was a very peaceful afternoon, beautiful sunset, beautiful sun and all that. And there was a long wheat field there, and a valley, and across the way there was a line of trees, a forest. That afternoon, we could see the Germans coming into that place. But we were there 6 days looking at each other, not doing anything. And I remember we were, being at where we were, we had difficulty with our food, but we'd have our galleys. The galleys was the movable cook stove, you know. They couldn't come up to the front line where we were, and so they would bring up food, and we ate a lot of raw bacon, and of course we'd get big cans of fruit of one kind and another, jelly and so forth. And so we were there, and got over to the German side, they disappeared in that forest over there. But we were there 6 days without really any action. You see, we didn't have, our artillery was horse-drawn, or mules mostly, and the artillery was slower than our movement when we were on trucks, and we didn't have any artillery for 6 days. And so we looked at each other, and then on the 6th day, hell began to popping, and I got hit very early, and so I didn't see the rest of it at that time. And they took me back to a farmhouse first, and a friend of mine who also was a casualty was there, and he had a casualty, I think, his arm, and it was in a farmhouse, and I was laid down on his lap, leaning on his lap for about an hour or two before we got ambulance to take us on back. And he had gotten some gas, some mustard gas, and I got a touch of mustard gas, which I didn't realize at all, off his clothing. Well, anyhow, we had terrific casualties there, and our outfit stayed there for about 25 days in the Bellow Woods, where the main fighting was going on, and a town called Baresh. So I finally got back to a hospital just out on the outskirts of Paris, and they were not prepared on later before and after this particular action. When they anticipated that an attack was to occur, they would have provisions made to take care of the casualties, and they'd have ambulances available and spaces in the hospitals for the casualties. But this time, we didn't anticipate it because the Germans had broken through unexpectedly. And so, after I got back to this hospital, I lay out in a corridor on a French stretcher. The French stretchers were too short to hit me in the calf of the leg and the back of the neck. I lay in a corridor before I was actually operated on. They were just overcome with the number of casualties. That's the greatest number of casualties that they'd had at that one particular time. Well, I later convalesced and went down to Vichy, which later was known in the Second World War as the headquarters of the French government. But they had some beautiful hotels down there that they'd taken over as hospitals. Yes. Time?
About 5 minutes.
Okay.
More.
And so we convalesced there, and then I came back and found myself in command of the company. And so I had the company from then on, and we had our best operation was shortly after I got back, the place called Blancmont. I could give you a whole story on that in a period. It'd take me that long to tell about that one particular action, because we were brigaded with the French. Yes.
So what rank were you when you were told you had to take over that company?
What is that?
What rank were you when you were told you had to take over the company?
I was first lieutenant. And there were 7 captains in the company, in the battalion, and the major wouldn't put anybody forward. Well, the the man that he was top above, he had a very low number, and he was still a second lieutenant, and the major wouldn't put anybody over him. Well, he had a company as a second lieutenant, and I had a company as a first lieutenant. I don't know what what 7 captains were doing, but they'd been set up later. Well, anyhow, I'd like to have more time to tell you about what life was like in the trenches and what happened and so forth. Yes.
Did the Marines see any action in the Meuse Argonne Forest?
In what?
In the Meuse Argonne campaign?
The Argonne?
Yes.
Oh, yes. The Argonne actually lasted from September until the armistice was signed. And troops were going in and coming out constantly. And we were in the last phase of the Argonne. We made our attack in the Argonne on the 1st of November and continued to attack until the armistice was signed. But before that, there'd been in this tremendous area, the Argonne was a tremendous width, you see, and that was entirely an American organization. And we were in the last stages of the Argonne, and we had very little opposition. As I say, I'm sorry I don't have more time to tell you. I could tell you a lot of stories about that, but time goes. And so in the last stages of the war, from early in September until the war was over, the Americans were really the force that brought the armistice on. Because we had the main brunt of the fighting. The French and English, they still had their trucks, but the Americans, when they had this, they broke out of the trench system. You see, for nearly 4 years, both sides were really bogged down in trenches, and they'd make an attack. They'd go about 2 miles. That'd be a big attack. But after September started, the Americans moved. We went about 13 miles the first day that we were in the Argonne, which was unheard of before that. And